Next item on the agenda is oral argument by counsel related to the briefs on the matter to consolidate in regards to the appeals of Thurman D. Miller, Darrell Williams, and Rodney Hyatt. The motion was filed by you, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Why don't you identify yourself, since we all know you, let just identify yourself, correct?
Floyd Falcon on behalf of Thurman Miller, Darrell Williams, and Rodney Hyatt.
Michelle Terroir on behalf of the Office of State Police.
I want to start off by saying that clearly how y'all proceed and handle this as consolidated, non-consolidated, and so forth is purely discretionary, and I recognize that. I would just like to share with you the concept that a substantial portion of the allegations in the three cases have a common thread. Darrell Williams has one additional charge. It's not relevant to the other two people, but the substance of the appeals relate to the trip to San Diego to attend a convention, all riding in the same vehicle to and from that convention, and so forth.
As I read the brief submitted by the department, I didn't see a real, obviously they're not conceding it, but I didn't see a real strong argument against the consolidation, but there was other issues that were raised relative to sequestration of witnesses.
This is my thought. Let me, I've been doing this a long time with the state police. I don't really even remember how many years, maybe 17, 18 years, something like that. In the past, we've had, and this is, I think, one of the most serious issues. In the past, we've had hearings where the commission would meet one day a month, and we would have a 3-day hearing, and it would take 3 or 4 months to complete that hearing. And every time you'd have to prepare, and you'd prepare 3 times for the continuation of the hearing. The justice was not served by, even in one time Michelle and I were talking, there was a case involving one of the pilots, and it was over 3 months, but there were a couple of months, 3 hearing days, there was a couple of months the hearing got canceled or something happened and we didn't have a quorum. We had different people at each hearing. For instance, today we don't have 7 people. The hearing started, we didn't have a consistency. We only had a couple of people that attended all 3 sessions, and it was a disaster. And I just would like to impress upon y'all that was unfair to the appellants. I think it's unfair to everybody. Frankly, I think it's unfair to the commission members. The idea was, well, there was going to be transcripts prepared, and everybody would review the transcripts before the decision was rendered. I guess that happened, but I got to tell you, if you have 3 days of transcript, 3 days of hearing, you're not listening to the witnesses. You're not, one of the triers of fact, one of the things that they're supposed to do is evaluate the credibility of the witnesses and so forth. This isn't a court of appeal where credibility has already made a decision. So we think that's a real issue I'd like y'all to consider. Another issue I'd like to...
So your concern is if we don't consolidate, you might have different compositions of the commission at the different hearings.
Well, actually, even if you don't consolidate, I don't think we can finish any one case in one day. Right. That's my concern. You see, you're not going to consider any. So let me give you a worst case scenario. In February we have the first day of a trial of Mr. Miller. In March we have the second day. Then in April we have the first day of Darrell Williams' trial, and we spread this out over 6 months. That's the worst case scenario, and I'll suggest that. So I'm hoping y'all would consider scheduling some days back to back. I would hope you would consider the consolidation. I don't see, Michelle raised the Office of State Police raised an issue about sequestration. I don't see sequestration as being a big issue, to tell you the truth. These 3 people have a right to hear. If we only consolidated parts of the trial, they have a right to be in every part of the trial.
Well, but that, although it's an issue that was raised, there's not currently a motion pending relative to that issue of sequestration.
Right.
I think it was simply raised so as not to waive their right to be able to assert that. That is not currently pending before us.
I agree. You know, another issue I'd like y'all to consider is this. If we have, so I'm gonna subpoena all the same documents in all three cases. If I want to, the rules only require to bring the documents to the hearing. Now, frankly, in cooperation with the Office of State Police, I usually get them a few days in advance. There's going to be a whole lot of documents in this case. I'm imagining a couple of 100 pages or so. I understand it's listening to the tapes of the various statements might take 10, 12 hours or so. We need to get that, whatever it is, we need to get it in advance. Now, if I only get it in advance in one case, then the guy whose appeal is second is going to have a serious advantage over the fellow whose appeal was first, because we've heard the tell. It's like if we were taking discovery and we were getting all of the documents and evidence, and we only get it in the first case, and the second and third people have an advantage because we had it in advance. I mean, it's the same. I'm representing all three of them, so it's the same. So it would be a disadvantage to the other people, or the person that had to go first.
But not to cut you short, Mr. Bobby, we could get to the gist of this. If you don't mind, I'll ask the department a question relative to.
Yeah, I think I said everything I wanted to say in my motion, frankly, and I think it's clear.
As I read your motion, as I read your opposition, you obviously don't concede the consolidation, but your more serious issues are raised relative to some other procedural aspects that are not currently before the board because there's not a motion pending on those. What is the department's position, without waiving any other objections you might have relative to whether these should be consolidated?
Well, as we pointed out, some aspects of these three cases are the same. Certainly to the extent the three individuals were in the same vehicle traveling the same route, those facts are the same. There are facts in between, days in between the travel days, as well as what they did afterwards, that are going to be separate and apart. I don't know if that requires consolidation or if that, as I stated, maybe some stipulations of fact that would be consistent in each of the three cases would work it out. We want the most efficient trial that there is, not just for the appellants, but for the agency also. We don't want you guys to have to sit through the recitation of consistent facts in three cases, 3 different times. I will agree with Mr. Falcon that it just really doesn't lend itself to divide these cases up, whether you consolidate them or not, over numerous months. I mean, you lose that information and everything, so regardless of how long each one takes individually, or if you consolidate them, it takes to hear it all together. You know, we would like to have each one or all of them together tried over a period of time that would be sufficient to hear the case.
Any responses?
Nothing else. No, my two main issues are not splitting them up and getting the documents in advance in order to prepare sufficiently, because it's going to be a voluminous.
Relative to not splitting them up, that's what's before us right now, and we will vote on that if the commission is ready to vote on it. Getting the documents in advance, if you want to file a motion relative to that, if we have jurisdiction to consider that, then we'll make that decision at that time. But the only thing right now in consideration is the motion to consolidate.
I'll make the motion to consolidate.
Second.
Okay, any discussion of the motion?
So what's the net effect of that? What does that mean?
They'll all be tried together. And we'll try not the right word. There'll be a single hearing where all three the evidence on all three will be presented. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter will be consolidated, reserving the rights of the parties, both sides, to file other procedural issues to bring before the commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so we're not gonna try and set a time now?
We have to consult our calendars, but, because there is some sympathy, I can only speak for myself, there is some, but I think there would be sympathy to try all of this in a single setting rather than to try it, that's my personal view. But we have to obviously consult calendars before we can make that call.
And we have an absent, commissioner that's not sworn in yet, you know.
Sure.
My goal, quite honestly, is gonna be to get with the other commissioners and let's carve off a week. You know, at least try and get 5 days in a row that we can try and work our way through this. I mean, we hear what you say, we've talked individually, you know, 1 or 2 at a time. We agree with what you're saying. To sit here and try and break this up over the next 6, 7 months, 1 day a month, it's ludicrous.
It was disastrous, I can tell you.
So,
It was disastrous.
I think the goal, you know, speaking for myself, I think the goal would be to try and, you know, set aside, you know, 4 or 5 days, or maybe 3 days in the following week, 3 days or something along those lines, once y'all tell us how long it's gonna be.
You know, we've often done that, by meeting with, Ms. Freeney. And that's worked out when we had y'all dates, but I mean, we also pretty much need to do it in consolidation with everybody, because I'm sure Mr. Simeon, I'm sure everybody here has a schedule,
Sure.
and getting everybody on one page, I got a couple, 3 cases in federal court coming up this spring, and they don't listen to you too much over there, they just tell you when to come. You know, so.
Well, bear with us, but know that that's what our goal would be, to try and carve off several days in contiguous weeks to try and do this.
Thank you, sir.
To highlight what you just said, I just got a notice from the Federal Fifth Circuit that told me the week in which my argument will be held, not the day. And then they told me, and you can move to have it on another time if you have an irreconcilable conflict. But the fact that you're supposed to be in another court is not an irreconcilable conflict for us.
Yeah, it's kind of like in Livingston, you know, in Livingston Parish, they tell you, set aside this week. Well,
Wait, but there will be consideration with that, with some sympathies towards the issues that you brought.
thank you, sir.
We have to get a calendar together.
Thank you.